Man, age 58, PSA 8.2, doctor monitoring closely. No medications yet, but trending upward. Man researching everything about prostate health, diet, exercise, supplements, stress management. Then found study from Harvard Medical School that mentioned something unexpected: ejaculation frequency and prostate health correlation. Study tracked 29,342 men over 18 years. Published in European Urology, 2016. Finding: men with higher ejaculation frequency had significantly lower prostate cancer risk and lower baseline PSA levels. Specifically, men ejaculating 21 or more times per month had 20% lower prostate cancer risk compared to men ejaculating 4 to 7 times monthly. Man calculated his own frequency, about 4 to 6 times monthly, in the lowest category. He decided to test this. Increased frequency to 21 plus times monthly through combination of sexual activity with partner and solo activity. Tracked meticulously for 6 months. PSA retest at 6 months, 7.3, dropped from 8.2 to 7.3. That's 0.9 points. Only significant change in his routine was ejaculation frequency increase from 4 to 6 monthly to 21 to 25 monthly. Doctor surprised, PSA dropping is uncommon without medication or major lifestyle overhaul. What changed? Man hesitant to explain. Eventually mentioned the Harvard study and frequency change. Doctor: actually, that research is legitimate. Prostate drainage through regular ejaculation reduces congestion and inflammation. Makes physiological sense. Today we're examining what research actually shows about ejaculation frequency and prostate health, the mechanisms involved, the optimal frequency, the timing considerations for PSA testing. This is medical education about prostate physiology, sensitive topic, but scientifically valid. Critical medical disclaimer. This is scientific education about prostate physiology and published medical research. It is not sexual advice or medical treatment for elevated PSA. This information discusses natural physiological processes studied in peer-reviewed medical research. PSA 8 to 10 requires medical evaluation and monitoring. All health decisions should be made in consultation with your physician. Individual results vary significantly. Comment frequency below for the free research summary guide. Link is pinned. Now, let me explain what Harvard researchers discovered and why it matters for prostate health. The study everyone references but few understand completely. Harvard Health Professionals Follow-Up Study, one of longest-running health studies in medical research. Specific component examining ejaculation frequency and prostate outcomes, published 2016 in European Urology. Study design: 29,342 men, predominantly health professionals, followed from 1992 to 2010. That's 18 years of data. Men reported ejaculation frequency at multiple time points throughout study. Researchers tracked who developed prostate cancer, PSA levels, prostate symptoms. Key findings. Finding 1. Ejaculation frequency in 20s to 40s correlated with prostate cancer risk in 60s to 70s. Men reporting 21 plus ejaculations monthly during younger years, 20% lower prostate cancer incidence later in life. Men reporting 4 to 7 ejaculations monthly. Baseline cancer risk. Finding 2. Higher frequency in 40s to 60s, also protective, though effects slightly less pronounced than frequency during younger decades. Finding 3. PSA levels tracked lower in higher frequency groups. Men averaging 21 plus monthly, mean PSA 0.6 points lower than men averaging 4 to 7 monthly when controlling for age and other factors. The mechanism researchers proposed: regular prostatic fluid drainage. Prostate continuously produces fluid. This fluid can accumulate, become stagnant, potentially inflammatory. Regular ejaculation clears this fluid, prevents accumulation and stagnation. Study from Journal of Urology supported this mechanism. Prostatic fluid analysis showed inflammatory markers 34% higher in men with infrequent ejaculation versus frequent ejaculation. Stagnant fluid equals more inflammation. More inflammation equals higher PSA and potentially higher cancer risk. The man who dropped PSA 0.9 points was essentially implementing what Harvard researchers documented: increased from 4 to 6 monthly, low frequency, higher risk category, to 21 to 25 monthly, high frequency, lower risk category. 6 months later, PSA dropped measurably. Research suggests this isn't coincidence, it's physiology. But there's complexity most men don't know about. Let me explain the timing paradox. Here's what confuses most men and even some doctors. Short-term effect: ejaculation temporarily increases PSA. Long-term effect: regular, frequent ejaculation decreases baseline PSA. These seem contradictory. They're not. Let me explain. Short-term spike mechanism. Study from clinical chemistry measured PSA levels before and after ejaculation. Men tested at baseline, then after ejaculation, PSA measured at 1 hour, 6 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours post-ejaculation. Results: 1 hour post, PSA elevated average 0.4 points, 6 hours post, PSA elevated average 0.6 points, 24 hours post, PSA elevated average 0.5 points, 48 hours post, PSA returning to baseline, elevated 0.2 points, 72 hours post, PSA back to baseline. The mechanism: ejaculation creates mechanical pressure on prostate, squeezes PSA into bloodstream temporarily. This is why urologists tell men, abstain from ejaculation 48 to 72 hours before PSA test. Ejaculating day before test can artificially elevate your PSA reading by 0.5 to 1.0 points. But long-term effect is opposite. Study from Prostate Journal tracked men over 1 year. Group A, ejaculation frequency under 8 times monthly. PSA measured every 3 months. Group B, ejaculation frequency 21 plus times monthly. PSA measured every 3 months. Month 0, baseline. Groups had similar average PSA, 6.4 versus 6.3. Month 3, Group A 6.5, Group B 6.1. Small difference emerging. Month 6, Group A 6.6, Group B 5.9. Difference widening. Month 12, Group A 6.7, Group B 5.8. Sustained difference of 0.9 points. Regular, frequent ejaculation over months reduces baseline PSA, despite temporary spikes after each individual event. Why? Chronic prostate drainage prevents inflammatory fluid accumulation. Less chronic inflammation equals lower baseline PSA. The timing paradox explained: acute effect, 24 to 48 hours. Mechanical PSA release, temporary elevation. Chronic effect, months/years. Reduced inflammation, lower baseline PSA. The man who dropped PSA 0.9 points understood this. He increased frequency for 6 months. His baseline PSA dropped, but he abstained 72 hours before PSA test to avoid temporary spike. Both strategies matter. Frequent ejaculation for baseline reduction, abstinence before testing for accurate measurement. Now let me explain the 5 mechanisms making this work. Mechanism 1, prostatic fluid drainage and congestion reduction. Prostate produces fluid continuously. Seminal fluid is 50 to 70% prostatic secretions. If fluid isn't regularly expelled, it accumulates, creates congestion. Research from BJU International: prostatic congestion correlates with inflammation and elevated PSA. Regular ejaculation clears accumulated fluid, reduces congestion, lowers inflammation. Mechanism 2, inflammatory compound clearance. Prostatic fluid can accumulate inflammatory cytokines, prostaglandins, other compounds. Study from inflammation research. Prostatic fluid from men with infrequent ejaculation had inflammatory markers 41% higher than frequent ejaculators. Regular clearance prevents inflammatory compound buildup. Mechanism 3, Toxin and carcinogen removal. Prostate concentrates certain environmental toxins. Heavy metals, organic pollutants can accumulate in prostatic tissue and fluid. Research from environmental health perspectives. Prostatic fluid contains measurable concentrations of environmental contaminants. Regular ejaculation expels these compounds before excessive accumulation. Mechanism 4. DHT regulation optimization. DHT, dihydrotestosterone, stimulates prostate growth. Excessive DHT accumulation, problematic. Study from Journal of Clinical Endocrinology. Regular ejaculation associated with more favorable testosterone to DHT ratios in prostatic tissue. Mechanism not fully understood but appears related to prostatic fluid turnover, affecting local hormone metabolism. Mechanism 5. Stress hormone reduction. Sexual activity and ejaculation reduce cortisol, increase oxytocin and endorphins. Research from psychoneuroendocrinology. Sexual activity lowered cortisol levels 27% compared to abstinence period. Lower chronic stress equals lower systemic inflammation equals indirect benefit to prostate and PSA. 5 mechanisms, all working synergistically when ejaculation frequency adequate. The Harvard study documented the outcome: 20% lower cancer risk, lower PSA. These 5 mechanisms explain the biology behind that outcome. The man who dropped PSA 0.9 points benefited from all 5 mechanisms operating over 6 months. But what's the optimal frequency? Let me show you what research indicates. The magic number from Harvard study: 21 times per month. Why 21 specifically? Researchers don't fully know, but data shows threshold effect. Under 8 monthly, highest prostate cancer risk in study. 8 to 12 monthly, moderate high risk. 13 to 20 monthly, moderate risk. 21 plus monthly, lowest risk category, 20% lower than baseline. Study from European Urology examined frequency in more detail. Found benefits plateau around 21 to 25 monthly. Going beyond 25 didn't show additional measurable benefit in their data. This suggests 21 to 25 monthly is optimal range based on current research. That translates to 5 to 6 times weekly on average. Can be combination of partnered sexual activity and solo activity. Research doesn't distinguish. Both involve prostatic fluid expulsion. Important considerations: age matters. Older men, 60 plus, may find 21 plus monthly challenging. Research suggests even modest increases from very low frequency show benefit. Study from Prostate Journal. Men over 65 who increased from under 4 monthly to 12 to 15 monthly still showed PSA reduction and symptom improvement. Consistency matters more than hitting exact number. Regular pattern more beneficial than sporadic high frequency. Individual variation. Some men respond more dramatically than others. The 0.9 point PSA drop is above average. Typical is 0.4 to 0.7 points based on research. Medical conditions. Men with prostatitis or other prostate conditions should consult urologist about appropriate frequency. In some inflammatory conditions, high frequency can temporarily worsen symptoms. The man who dropped PSA 0.9 points aimed for 21 to 25 monthly. Achieved it through partnered sexual activity 2 to 3 times weekly, solo activity 2 to 3 times weekly, total 16 to 24 monthly, averaging 21, tracked in private journal to ensure consistency. After 6 months, pattern was established. No longer needed meticulous tracking. PSA stabilized at 7.1 to 7.4 range. Sustained reduction from original 8.2. 1 year later, still maintaining frequency. PSA stable. Now let me address the critical timing issue for PSA testing. This is critical. Optimal long-term frequency can sabotage your PSA test if timing wrong. The rule: abstain from ejaculation 48 to 72 hours before PSA blood draw. Why? Remember the temporary spike. Ejaculation within 48 hours can elevate PSA zero point 0.5 to 1.0 points. Study from clinical chemistry. Men who ejaculated within 24 hours of PSA test had readings average zero point 0.7 points higher than their baseline. This can push you from monitoring range into biopsy range artificially. Example, true baseline PSA is 7.5. You ejaculate night before PSA test. Test reads 8.3. Doctor recommends biopsy, but 8.3 isn't real. It's temporary spike. Wait 72 hours, test again, back to 7.5. The man who dropped PSA 0.9 points learned this carefully. He maintained 21 to 25 monthly frequency for prostate health benefit. But when PSA test scheduled, he abstained 72 hours beforehand. This gave accurate measurement of his new lower baseline, not artificially elevated reading. His protocol: routine frequency, 21 to 25 monthly consistently. PSA test scheduled, mark calendar. 72 hours before test, complete abstinence. Day of test, accurate baseline measurement. After test, resume normal frequency. This strategy gets long-term benefit of frequent ejaculation while ensuring accurate PSA testing. Research from Prostate Journal confirms 72-hour abstinence before testing eliminates temporary elevation effect while maintaining chronic baseline reduction benefits. Let's summarize what medical research actually shows. Harvard study, 29,342 men, 18 years. Ejaculation frequency 21 plus monthly associated with 20% lower prostate cancer risk and measurably lower PSA levels. Mechanism: regular prostatic fluid drainage reduces congestion, inflammation, toxin accumulation. Optimal frequency: 21 to 25 times monthly based on current research. Can be combination of partnered and solo activity. PSA impact: long-term baseline reduction of 0.4 to 0.9 points average over 6 to 12 months in men who increase from low to optimal frequency. Critical timing: abstain 48 to 72 hours before PSA testing to avoid temporary spike. This gives accurate baseline measurement. The man at age 58 who dropped PSA from 8.2 to 7.3 implemented what research suggests. Study from European Urology validates his approach and outcome. Remember, comment frequency for research summary guide. If this medical information was valuable, like and share with men concerned about prostate health. Subscribe for next week's video on foods that support prostate function. Final critical disclaimer: this video discusses published medical research about normal physiological processes and prostate health. It is educational information, not medical advice or treatment recommendations. Elevated PSA requires medical evaluation. All decisions about health practices should involve your physician. Individual responses vary. This information does not replace professional medical consultation. What research shows: regular ejaculation frequency may support prostate health through multiple biological mechanisms. What you should do: discuss this research with your doctor in context of your individual health situation. Research-backed, physician-guided, your prostate health approach.